I think we may be live now. If we're live, hi everyone. Welcome to the webinar today. We will be starting very shortly. We'll just leave it a few more moments for other people to join. Perhaps we'll start exactly on the dot, Steve.
Sounds good.
For those of you who have joined, if you'd like to drop where you're dialing in from, it's always nice to see where everyone's at. And here we are, we're at 2 o'clock. So hello everyone, welcome to our webinar today. My name is Tracy, I'm a Thrive Learning Impact Manager lead here at Thrive. So I've worked here for 6 years now, having worn many hats whilst focused on our customer partnerships. Today, I am super privileged to be hosting this webinar in partnership with AO, and I will very soon introduce Steve, who's joined me today. We'll be exploring how they transform Thrive from a learning platform into a central destination for knowledge, support, and community. So today's session is great for everyone who's working in HR, L&D leaders, people leaders, internal communications and employee experience teams, anyone who is curious and wants to know more about single sites and how ultimately you can connect through learning platforms and beyond. So what we'll focus on today is how organizations aren't necessarily struggling with the lack of content, but mainly around struggling how it actually is organized and where that lives. So think of policies that sit in SharePoint systems, processes living in PDFs, guidance buried in folders, employees, support, resources, all scattered across multiple sites. Today, we're going to be thinking about those people who generally tend to waste time searching for information. And making it really difficult for employees to find information that they need during the time that they need it within. So today we're going to be focused on how AO faced this challenge head on, thinking about the critical knowledge that's scattered across disconnected systems, making it difficult for people to find that information. And ultimately, Steve will be talking about how they consolidated knowledge, helping everyone be able to find the information that they need, making it feel a lot more accessible, improving that employee experience within itself. So, Steve, would you like to introduce yourself and AO, who I'm sure everyone is familiar with?
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Steve. I'm the L&D lead at AO. I look after two sides. I look after the delivery team and the design team. Looking after the strategy where we put our energy to best serve AOs. So we have a business tagline of we treat every customer like so, it's treat every customer like a grand, and we make decisions that make our mum proud. Our customer in L&D is the AOers. So everything we do is about providing them the best service. Anyone who doesn't know who AO are, we're an e-commerce business. We've become the first retail business to pass 1 million Trustpilot reviews at 4.9%. And we're just obsessed with the customer experience. To do that, we've got our own logistics network. We spent over £20 million growing a recycling plant and building that from the ground up. We've recently acquired Music Magpie, and I suppose what that all means is we service lots of different AOers. We've got different language considerations. We've got accessibility considerations. So people with screen readers. We've got people that are desk-based and people that are operational. So those that are using the phones. So everything we do is about providing the best service for our people when it comes to learning.
Thanks, Steve. You mentioned quite a few different environments there. So could we delve into more around the problems that we're trying to solve and why SharePoint wasn't delivering the experience that people actually needed?
Yeah, certainly. So I've had many conversations across the years that we was using SharePoint, but with the understanding that it was never a long-term solution. SharePoint's got lots of positives, but I suppose the pain points and where we thought we could develop further is the search function within SharePoint isn't ideal. It isn't very intuitive. What we was having to do was build different environments within the SharePoint. So kind of you started at the beginning. You've got policies, so all the policies would sit in one area of SharePoint because you kind of want to lock those down.
Mm.
You'll have a different area which is called the manager toolkit, and it was just a bank of PDFs and articles within a SharePoint that a manager could go to in the moment of need. And that's what we were finding as we were speaking to managers and AOs across the business is actually when you're in that moment of need, you want to find the answer quickly. SharePoint wasn't allowing that. Um, the SharePoint wasn't the most intuitive. It wasn't accessible for everybody. When we've got people with different language considerations, it was hard for us to service those in the way that helped that person at the other end of that. So the more we spoke about it, what we wanted to do is use Thrive and what we call the learning hub within Thrive,
Mhm.
to help AOs find that and managers find that in the best way.
Thank you. So ultimately, where we were rethinking knowledge and the
Mhm.
support and the structure of that, you saw the opportunity with Spaces, which
Yeah,
is a new area within the platform. I'm going to share my screen just so people can see what it is that we're actually referring to. Um, this should take 2 seconds. Here we go. Can everyone see that? Can you
yeah,
see that, Steve?
it's just come through now. Yes.
Fabulous. So ultimately, this was the solution which you identified as a great way to restructure that knowledge management. Could you share more around why you chose Spaces and the opportunity that you saw as to your decision behind why you actually chose to go with Spaces?
Yeah, so I've got a member of my team which I'm really lucky to have who has a history of UX design and web design. And me and him have had many conversations over the last kind of couple of years about what are the opportunities to make learning more accessible. Um, and I suppose as Thrive iterated and brought out kind of more intuitive ways of learning, you brought Kiki into the platform, which is the AO search bot, you brought Spaces, and actually, what we saw is an opportunity to bring something really purposeful to the platform. And if we was able to take what we had in all the different areas that we had it in the SharePoints, in the files, and bring it onto Spaces, what it allowed is whatever the best way for the AO to find the learning, we
Mhm.
could service it to them in that format. So what Spaces did was almost allow us to really think about the instructional design. How do we make it really easy for someone to click through, almost like a web page, to find what it is they're looking for? So if you take the manager toolkit, there'll be different cycles within the manager. The manager life cycle that they will be dealing with. So it could be onboarding, it could be a coaching session, it could be a one-to-one, and actually to get to that right area in a SharePoint is lots of clicking, and actually you get there and you might not always find what you want, or it might not be you might not quite have searched the right word. Where what
Mhm.
Spaces allow us was for us to be really prescriptive in terms of what's going to be in that area. It follow a really obvious path. For the person, but more than that, by us building the Spaces, it might be Spaces isn't the way that the AO wants to go and find that. Like I mentioned, they might use Kiki, they might use the search function, but because we've built a really thought out space, then they will find it in the way that works for them. But it just means there's one space you can go to where, as a manager, from end to end, everything you can think need within that life cycle is there, in the way that you are telling us that you want it. So, kind of a large part of that speaking to people and finding where are the learnings that you would want to find. Oh, okay, it's about absence management, it's about parental support, whatever that might be. And then within those sections, what we have then is lots of policies, we have guides, we have pieces of learning that you can go to that's going to show me how to do it, what's that um, almost operating rhythm that I should apply when I'm going through. So if I've got somebody who's going on paternity leave, what does that life cycle look like? What can my
Mhm.
operating rhythm be so I can provide the best service for the AO on the other end? And then there's learning there that helps you do that in the best way. So now I know what I need to do and when I need to do it. What does good look like? And that's what we try to build within the Spaces.
Brilliant. So that's a superb example of how you've been able to utilize spaces and creating that manager community. Should we have a look at the well-being space as well? As ultimately,
Yes.
I understand that you actually sought out some feedback in regards to creating this well-being space.
Yes, yeah, and we do that with any piece of learning. What we would like to think with anything we do in learning, it's we're not doing it to the person, we're doing it for them. And actually, for us to provide the best solution, we will link in with people. We're linking with people up front. We'll trial these to small pockets of, I suppose, kind of test groups first, and we will iterate and
Mhm,
we'll get their feedback as we go. So we linked in with shareholders across AO, so that's kind of the end users who are going to be using these manager level, and kind of senior levels, to understand what each of them wanted from the space before we built it. Once we've then built it, it's then kind of testing it, and then iterating
mhm,
from there. So, kind of what that brought out is little bits, so you can see the four tiles there. Originally, we just had the different sections on the right hand side, but people told us actually if they could click through those tiles, that would be a better experience for them. So that was a bit of kind of iteration that we had on the back end of that.
mhm,
And what that does is creates as well a community that helps you promote these spaces, because people have been involved in helping you build it. They will naturally go and talk to their colleagues, their friends about it, and that helps us market what the benefit of this is going to be for everybody. And it makes gives us the chance to make sure the expectations and how to use this and get the best out of it is kind of really set out up front, because we'll have done the testing, we'll find what works, where do we need to think again, and it helps us create a real community within those spaces.
brilliant. And just touching more along the kind of thought around the community, how has spaces helped increase engagement with all the different employee groups across the business?
Yeah, so if you take the wellbeing space as an example, and wellbeing space is just part of the strategy, and we
Mhm,
have lots going on across the business around wellbeing. One of the big focus is kind of employee recognition groups. So what this allowed was actually we built something that's purposeful, that helped draw awareness of all the different activities that are going on across the business. So it helped draw signpost people to piece of content that will help them when they've kind of got a consideration themselves. So let's say they're neurodiverse, they want to go and find content to help them, or they want to build their understanding to help a colleague. It took them to content. It took them to a space that drove awareness to our employee recognition group, the Neuro Navigators. So as we kind of built out these spaces and we took the continuous feedback, what was able to build is something that was adding benefit to everybody. And let's say it then ends up being mutually beneficial, because what happens is somebody goes on the space, they find out about the recognition group that interests them, they go along to that group, they then have an idea, they feed it back through the space, through the group, and then we're able to make real change across the business based on real feedback from people with lived experience. But more than that, then we can update the space and make sure it's really impactful, and it's continuing to develop and iterate so it works for all our people.
mhm.
Uh,
And then, sorry.
so no, and kind of the other thing that we're able to do is at that stage is then also feed and serve the AOs exactly what it is that they're looking for in terms of learning. So one of the going back to getting AO feedback and creating a platform and a space that works for them is we've spoke to kind of thousands of people across our estate over the few years to say, what does good learning look like to you? And
Mhm,
40% of people said a video is their preferred way of learning. 29% of people said audio. So again, we can feed that into the space when we're building content. It's not just infographics, not just e-learns. We're able to put videos and audio learning in, because that's what people tell us they want. So we've just launched our own internal podcast for the first time, and that's again on the back of people's feedback. The content we're buying in feeds into that. So when we're building these spaces, there's the policies and documents we want to make people aware, and then when we're helping the people do the thing better, it's in a format
mhm.
that works for them.
Brilliant. So it's very evident in the fact that, you're utilizing spaces as a way to elevate people's voices,
Yes.
and taking that feedback into meaningful business improvements. Do you have any other examples that you can share with us as to how you've brought that to life as well?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think again, if you go back to the employee recognition groups that we mentioned, we have many of those across the organisation. So we have a women at AO, a men at AO group, race and religion, neuro navigators, new parents. What the
Hmm.
spaces have done, as I mentioned, kind of drive people to them. What that then does is drive out real change that we can make across the organisation, and so. Um, yeah, what we've got is we're able to make those forums what people want because they're continuously using those tools as a way to feed back into us. So someone might go to the group and that might spark an idea once they've left the group. So they'll feed that back through the space. Or somebody might not feel comfortable go to a group for the first time. They'll reach out through the space and through the social aspect to say, I'm a new parent and kind of I'm struggling with this. Has anybody got anything they can support with? We can then signpost the right piece of learning, and then hopefully through that community, it drives people to the groups, and also they will see that the impact that those groups are having is making real change for other AOers and other people in that situation, and that might make them feel a bit more comfortable to come. And it's that education piece. If actually the lack of knowledge. You might hear about this group, but you don't really know what it is. You don't really know what that's achieved. You you, you might not go to it, but if you can go to a space and you can read that and listen to that and see that in your own time, what this is about, it then makes you more comfortable to go along, and that's where we can make the real impact.
Yeah. And thinking about the user experience, and you mentioned Kiki earlier on. So thinking about
Yes.
AI and accessibility, can you talk about how Kiki supports that experience in regards to people logging into the site and finding that relevant information?
Yeah, it goes back to that learning in the moment of need. What you tend to find is people will go to a space when they're more generally learning. So they will go and they'll go, okay, I might be onboarding. If you take the manager toolkit again, I might be onboarding somebody into my team. Let's go and make sure I'm in the best place to support them moving forward. What
Mhm.
Kiki tends to then to support is in the moment of need. So I've read that learning up front and there's onboarding, but the situations arose that I kind of didn't expect to arise, or maybe didn't research up front. So I can then go in and I'll type into Kiki, um, and you can almost use it as a bit of a coaching tool. So let's say the situation might be that um, kind of me, I was phoned in sick, and I wasn't really expecting that on day two, so I've not gone and looked
Mhm.
into that yet. So kind of how do I support an AO in being sick? And then you type that in, and what that will do is the way we've got the Kiki set up in the platform is it will use our learning first and then it will use Copilot support and wrap around that support if there's more detail needed. So what we've got is AOs going in and there and using it to coach them in situations. It might be a
Mhm.
manager actually is going into the first one-to-one. And what we find in our organization is we're a business that likes to promote from within and empower our staff. So they might never have done a one-to-one before. This might be the first one. So what they can do is because there's loads of content in there which will inform the answer, you could almost use Kiki to talk through that situation. Say, I'm going to run a first one-to-one. This is kind of how the performance has been. This is what I'm thinking of doing. Kind of what feedback model might I use? Are there any questions I should ask? And it will use that content to help them form that answer and support them in that moment of need rather than going and educating yourself up front for something. So your Kiki is really powerful because you've got the space, all the content's there. Kiki will read that content to help that person and give them an answer. So they can use it as a traditional search engine and it will give them the answer there and then, or they could use it more as a coaching tool to say, I'm going to learn this. And then to flip that round, what we also then find is AOers that they might not be the manager and it might be their first job and they've never had a one-to-one before and they might or they might have a skill that they want to improve but they don't have the confidence to go and say that. What we'll find
Mhm.
is AOers then asking Kiki to say, I've got my first one-to-one coming up. Is there anything I should be doing to prepare for this? Again, it will read the content and give them answers. Or it might be I've joined this new team and I'm kind of doing really well in this area, but I want to develop this skill to help me. I've noticed my colleagues are really good at this. I don't feel as confident. They type that in and ask them, and what Kiki will then do is build them a learning path to say, okay, this is what we think you need to do to get to the level that you want to get to. So why don't you go and watch this piece of content? Why don't you apply the learning in this way? And as long as your
Mhm.
prompt's good up front, like with any large language model, and then it will build something that's really helpful for you on the back end. And we're seeing AOs use it that way as well.
Brilliant. And revisiting ultimately where we've spoken about how the platform is supporting communities, self-driven learning,
Yes.
thinking about it as a compliance solution as well, and driving engagement beyond that. How would you describe what happens when employees visit the platform for more than training, as to how we've just described it?
Yeah, I think ultimately marketing is one of the biggest ways I think our jobs developed over the years. And the reason we market is we want to create a habit. What I want and I see success as my role is that if somebody's got a query, they're not going to go and Google it, or they're not going to go to um, kind of externally Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever it is, and search for that, because ultimately we know hallucinations happen. We don't know where that information is coming from, and they might not get the right answer for our organization. So, what I want to do is drive people back into the learning hub. So, actually, for me, everything that we've done is about driving habits. So, kind of the projects that we're looking at the moment, it's about what are the safeguards for our business. And actually, a safeguard is if somebody's searching for knowledge, they use the learning hub, because then we know that the information they're going to get out the back end of that is the answer that we kind of want them to have as an organization. And some of those are at a higher risk level than others, but if you take a low risk level one, so within our organization, um, kind of some of the feedback models that we use have been slightly tweaked to align to our tone of voice and the way we do things here. So if you go and search kind of feedback models, they might not necessarily be the ones that we want in our organisation. So again, by them driving people back into our platform, creating that habit, what you will then hopefully see is they will then deliver and find the answers that, again, let's say you want them to find. So for us creating habits about, let's say, getting people loading this up as part of the everyday learning, create and part of habit form is attaching it, isn't it? So if somebody finds a problem, let's say that they load up Kiki, they go and search on the search function. If somebody wants to develop a skill, again, it might be they go and speak to the manager, and the manager's then setting a goal within the platform for them, and it's all everything's about driving them back into the platform, and let's say
Mhm.
creating that habit. Because for me, and one of the things I've learned over time is it's not about the number of pieces of content, it's about the quality of the content and how that can support that output at the other end. So again, yeah, creating the habits about them coming, telling us what's worked, telling us what's not, and then we can create the best experience for that AO. And if you go back to kind of where I started about AO, and our job's to make sure that that person's got everything they need, they're our customer. And we want to give them the best service we can, and part of that, let's say, is about creating the habit and letting people, educating people what's there, how to use it, because that's ultimately what then will drive the better output for them.
Absolutely. I like how you really touch upon building those habits, and rather than just introducing new tools, it's helping people to understand how they can adopt that into their daily workflows. I think that's
Yes.
a super important part of it. So thinking about other people who might be in a similar position where they're thinking about actually expanding from managing structured learning to, really wanting to incorporate communities and building a space of their own, what would you advise those organizations?
First and foremost, I'd say just try it. The first version won't be the last, and you will continue to iterate. But I think see it as an opportunity to create a learning experience. I think we've moved away from it to kind of being a bank of content, and it's about driving that experience and the outputs of that. So I think whatever subject that kind of the person wants to learning on, you can build something that's kind of really impactful. So again, if take kind of I've been moving a little bit away from the couple of spaces we talked about there, but we've recently done something on Copilot and AI usage because that's
Mhm.
a big content. But what we was able to do was build a space that had the piece of content in there. It had some recap learning on there. It had some kind of tasks for the people to go away and learn on that. And it became a real learning experience rather than a kind of one off intervention. And I think you can procrastinate about this as much as you want, but while you're doing that, you're missing an opportunity to help your people. So I think go out there, build a space. And then speak to your people and keep coming back to it. And that's like what the space will do is enable other things. So again, kind of when we're talking about some of those changes with our ERG groups, they came. Somebody saw one of our spaces, went along to the group, and we was able to make a real change to how we help people back into the business who've been on maternity leave. Somebody
Mhm.
else kind of went to one of those spaces and fed kind of some health things back, and was able to, and both the men and the women help. We've been able to get things into the business that help all AOers, and the space has been the enabler. And again, in the neurodiversity kind of space, and I think the biggest one and one of the first wins we had was around our race and religion group, and we had a prayer room, and we've always had a prayer room, and nobody's ever raised that there was kind of that wasn't the best prayer room. I think there was gratefulness that there was a prayer room there for people to come and use, but somebody saw our space, went along to the group, and fed back that actually it'd be really beneficial for them if they could have a prayer room with a sink in it, because part of the ritual is to have a wash before you go and pray, and that kind of was a full circle moment in terms of the the space drove somebody to the group then drove a change, and that change has been so beneficial for all AOers, and but that's come from somebody with lived experience. And I think that's the opportunity with spaces. You can build real communities that can make real impact to your organization.
Dare I say it, it sounds like you created a safe space
Yes.
that ultimately enabled you then to bring that into the real world,
Yes.
which is fantastic. So I think what you've really shared with us, Dee, is very much around bringing people on that journey. So asking for feedback, identifying the gaps, finding out what is it exactly that people are yearning for or have the appetite to see, without delay, creating it, reiterating based on the experience that you are facilitating, and then ultimately bringing it into the real world as well. So,
Yes.
thank you very much for sharing your story and experience and successes from launching spaces onto your platform.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, C.